This is going to be the first functionality video to our inventory with our UMG widget. So in this one we're going to be making our drop button actually function. So if you saw in the previous one, your inventory is completely blank. When you pick up an item, you have an item, but you can't do anything with it. Just none of these are actually functional. So to give a quick rundown of what we're going to do here, the first initial bit is going to be done in Blueprint because we need to store things like a reference to the item in our actual inventory, the item that we clicked on. Then we need to have means of accessing it, and that portion is going to be done through like C++. So we're going to have functions in C++ that make calls to the server to ultimately make sure we do have the item, and if we do, we drop it. And that's going to be kind of like our baseline for when we move on to using the item as well, which will actually be in the next video. This one's just going to be focusing on dropping to try to keep it shorter because the last video was like 40-something minutes. So let's actually go ahead and get started. So if we go over here to our inventory element, we go to actually I already had the button. Here's our B item. If we drag it out, no, we need to make an on-click event, duh. So click the B item button, on clicked, and we'll have a clicked event. So the idea here is when we create, which function is it? Create valid item. When we create our inventory widget, we're going to be passing in our own widget here, like this. This is going to be our parent. We're going to be passing in this parent. Okay, so the inventory UI, this is the parent widget to our inventory element. We're going to be passing in the parent widget to our inventory element and storing it, so that way we can have access to it and call functions on it that we're going to create later. So we're going to pass it in, then when the button's clicked, we're going to make a call on a function we create in the inventory UI, which is going to just kind of initiate everything. So it's going to store the pickup, our item reference, in our inventory UI. So we're going to have a variable here dedicated for that. So let's go ahead and create that variable. Remember, we're in inventory UI, so our user interface. Let's call it item reference, just like before, and the type is already pickup, which is convenient. So the type is going to be pickups and object reference. Compile and save. Then under inventory element, let's create a new variable. Call this one parent reference, same thing, inventory UI, object reference, instanceable, and expose on spawn. Compile and save. And if we go to our inventory UI, here's our create widget. Right click, go to refresh nodes. You will see there is a new pin here for the parent reference. So we're just going to drag off of this and put this, and it's just going to be a reference to ourself, which is our inventory UI. So now we have access to it, our parent reference. So we can go ahead and drag off, get. We're going to make sure it's valid. And branch. Alright, so if we do have a valid reference to our parent, and I want to do its check as well for item reference, because that's ultimately what that's going to be used for anyways. About right there. And if it's valid here, then we want to call a function on our inventory UI. So let's create a new function here in our inventory UI. Call this one set selected item. Yeah, good enough. And have its input be type of pickups again. So I just call it item. Type is going to be pickups, object reference, compile, and save. Then we're going to drag off our item reference variable that we created. Simply set it. So now let's go ahead and call it. So parent reference, set selected item, drag it off to the true pin, and item reference is going to be what we pass in. So our inventory UI should now have access to the item that we have selected. I think. Let's go ahead and actually print it out. So I'm going to do print string just to make sure. And when I click on it, it should print out a message. Yep, there we are. So that is where here we are. Good to go. Now we can I'm going to go ahead and close create valid item slot. We don't need it. Now we can make a button click. So on the B drop button, let's create an on clicked event. We are going to do the same thing. Get our inventory component. Let's clean it up a bit. So if we have our inventory component, here's where we can call functions on our inventory. So this is where we're going to make start working on our C++ functions. So head over to our inventory.h. And since we're working on drop item, that's what we're going to use. So we need to make this callable from blueprint first off. So u function blueprint callable. I'm going to go ahead and build. Now this, if we're currently on here, let me wait for this to build real quick. Alright, so right here, if we hit play, obviously we're the client. So we pick up an item, click drop. When I click drop, let's say we had it set up to where it would drop as is. Our drop item function gets called. And it's going to check and see if we're the server or not. And since we are not the server, we are a client, nothing is going to happen at all. So what we're going to have to do is make a call from drop item from our client to the server. And that's where it's going to do the check. So what it's going to do is it's going to check and make sure the item that's passed in is inside of our inventory. And then if that is, well, first off, make sure we're the server, and then check if the item is part of our inventory. And if it is, then we will simply run this code here, and then we will remove it out of our inventory. And then we're going to have a function in here that gets called after that has done that will refresh it. So when we click drop on a medkit, that medkit is going to be removed from our inventory visibly as well. So hopefully that was a decent enough explanation. So let's go ahead and create it. So under protected, we're going to make a server function. So u function server reliable with validation, void server underscore drop item bool server underscore drop item validate. I think that's right. We also need to make this take in a parameter of the item as well. Void server drop item implementation. Let's make it take in an item. Let's create definitions for our validate and implementation function. And move over there. So they are up here. I'm going to put them just above drop item. And actually here we can do a check. We're actually going to make use of our validate function for once, because this is kind of the one of those times of preventing cheating. So actually, let's make a new function here real quick as well. Let's call it, make it return a bool. Check if client has item. Whoops. And make it take in the item. So we're going to simply call this, and that's going to be our return. So if we have the item, we're returning true. If we don't, we return false, and it disconnects the caller from the server. Probably would also help if I created a definition for it, which is right here. So we're going to use this on our use item as well, which is why I want to go ahead and create it. So let's go ahead and loop through. So I'm going to do my for loop. It's going to be a pickups, pickup, and items. Then we're going to do a simple check. So if pickup equals item, then we simply can return true. Otherwise, return false, meaning nothing has been found. So the item is not in our inventory. So we're going to make this return, check if client has item, and pass in item. Alrighty, so now let's move our drop item to our implementation function. And we're going to call server underscore drop item and pass in drop item from our drop item function. It's getting a little repetitive, but deal with it. Alright, so we make sure we are the server. I wonder if that's even necessary on server functions. Now we need to check if the player actually has the item. Wait, no, we already did that, duh. So we are dropping the item. Let's make another function actually. Void. I'll make it a boolean. Remove item from inventory. Class a pickups item. Alright, so remove item from inventory. This one's going to be very simple. It's going to essentially actually be the same dealio here, where we check if the item is in our inventory. If we find it, then we simply will remove the item from our array as well. So that way when we go to refresh our inventory and stuff like that, it actually gets updated properly. So let's make a variable here so we can have a counter. So int 32 counter equals 0. And let's increment it on each loop run. Alright, so if pickup equals item, we want to remove it. So items dot remove at counter. And default parameters are going to be the same, so as you can see. Number of elements to remove, default is 1, that's all we want. And allow shrinking, which will make the array shrink, which we also want. So the only thing we're going to pass in is counter. So we're going to return true, meaning that the item was successfully removed, and return false if it was not. So that is just going to be, we're not going to actually really use the return value probably, but it's nice to have it just in case we do want to do that check. So now in our actual drop function, we need to remove item from inventory. So remove item from inventory, item. Alright, let me just run through this real quick. Get the inventory, we're going to call drop item. Drop item makes us call to the server, passing in the item. We check, make sure we actually own the item on the client. Drop it. And remove it. Hopefully that removes it. Alright, let's go ahead and build, which I may have already done. I don't remember. Alright, so get player inventory component. We are going to call drop item. And the item to drop is item reference, which we actually need to check and make sure item reference is valid first. That would probably be a smart idea. Let's move this stuff down. We're going to clean this up later as well and make it nice and neat. I want that to actually be the first check, so if it's found, we do that crap. If that's found, we do that crap. And pass in the item. Alright, so fingers crossed that this actually works first try. Grab medkit, open inventory, click it, and drop. Wow, it actually worked. Reopen inventory, it's not there, so it is dropped and removed from inventory. So let's pick up all three. I do have a potential issue that I see, so let's also test that. Right, so drop, drop, and drop. Alright, so there's our food, which we still have this selected. If I press drop again. Alright, it actually disconnected us from the server. So we need to make sure that we refresh our inventory each time so that does not happen. But yeah, that actually worked kind of as intended. So that kind of eliminated that problem that I saw in my head. It's just, yeah, good enough. Alright, so now we need to refresh our inventory. So, as we know, the item is getting removed from our items are right here. So what we need to do is clear all the children that we've added from our inventory wrap, or our wrap box. So that is dirt easy, and then we need to recall this. So I'm thinking about putting this into an actual function itself. Yeah, let's do that. So let's create a new function. Call this populate inventory. And drag all this crap. And paste. Alright, now let's call it. Make sure it actually works the same. Nothing, pick it up. Something, drop. Did I actually click drop? Or did it get put inside this thing? Yeah, drop. Yeah, it got put inside this box. So that would be why. So there are some little minor tweaks that we're going to end up having to probably do. That'll be later on when we actually start kind of polishing it up a little bit. But for now, we're just going to leave it. This should be pretty easy to fix. So the idea here is get a position straight from the character and check where we want the position to be and see if it either intersects. If it does, we're going to try another position. Or we can just send out rays in both the X positive, X negative, Y positive, and Y negative directions and see if we actually hit anything. And if we don't, then we simply drop it to the ground. Alright, so we have our populate inventory. We could simply do this, which is going to refresh it, but that doesn't look very good. So click use, it should disappear. You know, it probably would help if I cleared the children first. So inventory wrap, get it, clear children. And damn it, nah. And call our populate inventory again. Alright, so for testing I want to pick up two things. Remove the health. And it is not working. And should disconnect me, which it does. Alright, so I'm wondering if the delay for the replication is just taking a bit too long. We can test that by running ourselves as the server. So if this works, drop. Okay, so that's why. So we're probably going to want to set it a little bit of a delay, and we're going to call our we can actually make a refresh function. So refresh inventory. What we're going to do is clear the, go ahead and copy this. We're going to clear the children of our inventory wrap, or wrap box, and then we're going to recall populate inventory. But because we want a little bit of a delay there, let's go ahead and create a timer. Set timer by function name. Name being populate inventory. Initial time, I don't know, 0.3. Should be fine. Do I need an object passed in? Meh. Let's just see. And nope, wait, derp. Yeah, I'm the client. Clear it. Drop. Nope. And let's see, I gotta make sure this is actually running. So let's print out a string. Print string. Yeah, say hello. Whoops, dang it. Yeah, compiled. Hello. Click drop. No, right, I gotta have something valid. Click. Wait for that to disappear. Click drop. Okay, so it's not running the function, it seems. What did I do wrong here? Make sure that is spelled right. Should be. Which it is. I'm not calling cleared children, am I? I mean, refreshed. Nope. Alright, let's try it now. Click, drop, and you can see it refreshes. Like, I don't know how quickly that would actually take. For that to get the update. Like, do I even need the delay right now? Or did I just forget to do something last time? Alright, yeah, so I'm going to need a little bit of a delay. At least for the way that we're doing this right now, which we should probably consider really improving on later. Yeah, leave it at... Yeah, see what happens there. Because I really don't know what the rate is that items or variables get replicated. And so out of curiosity, let's go ahead and test on a separate host. But so far everything seems to be going pretty well. Click health, drop, drop. Alright, so that's a little inconsistent. So this should disconnect me. which it did. Yep. Alright, so that should also prevent players from trying to cheat by dropping and using items they don't have. Yeah, for reliability's sake, I'm going to leave this at 0.1. At least then we know it's reliable. So drop, drop. Okay, I'm going to hit it. There we go. Alright, got all 3 items. Drop the food, drop the health, drop the water. And we're good to go. Let's test one more time outside of it with 2 clients. I'm going to pick up health, water. Alright, the items are gone. Let's drop the water. Appears right there. Appears there. And drop the... Actually, pick up the water. Alright, I need to do something about making this easier. There we go, got it. So this should just have water, which it does. This guy should have the health. He drops it. Sees the health, sees the water, drops it. Alright, everything seems to be working pretty much as intended there. Let's close these down. Let's go through and reiterate like usual. So where do we start? No. Alright. So first off, we start out by call our function to populate our inventory. From there, when we create our valid item, call our created valid item slot. We're going to be passing in both the reference to this widget as well as the item reference, like the item in our array. And that is going to create this widget here. This event construct is going to run. We're going to check, make sure the item reference is in fact valid. If it is, you know, like before I said, we set the button valid, as well as if we call our set slot icon function. Then when we click on a button, this is what we did new. So we check, make sure we have a valid parent reference, which we passed in here. And then we make sure we have a valid item reference as well, because we're only passing in a parent reference if we have a valid item reference to pass in with it as well. So if it's an empty slot, this should fail right off the bat, so there's no need for any of this to run, and vice versa. So if both the parent and the item reference are found, we call set selected item, which is a function that we have on the parent widget, to this. So set selected item simply sets a variable, which is the reference to the pickup item, like the med kit, water, and food and stuff. Simply sets the item reference variable here to have a value, which is a pointer to those items. Then when we click the drop button, what we're doing is we're checking to make sure the item reference is valid. Actually, I think I see a potential issue, but I'll check it after discussing this. Then we get our input component again, our inventory. If that's valid, then we simply call our drop item function and pass in the item reference, which, where is it? Here it is, which makes a call from the client to the server and passes in the item again. And from there, we check and make sure we do in fact have the item in our inventory with this function here. If we do not have the item, we return false, which will make this return false, and anytime you return false on a validate function, it disconnects the client that tried to do this, so it kind of just kicks them out of the server. That's one way to prevent cheating there. And if it returns true, it's going to run this function here, the implementation. Now this is going to do everything we did before, you know, how it snaps itself to the ground and then makes it visible. Then we call remove item from inventory, which again is on the server, which it wouldn't hurt to do a server check. So if get owner role equals role authority. Alright, so it's going to check if we do have the item in our inventory. We are going to remove it at that index, and it's also in turn going to resize the T array, and we're going to return true. Then if that's, when now that's said and done, we call our refresh inventory function, which simply clears all the children inside of the wrap box, which is this here, that has little slots in it. And then we start a little timer. So after 1 millisecond, roughly, we call our populate inventory function again, which simply recreates our inventory. It adds all the items to it, and as well as creates all the empty items. So, oh yeah, that one thing I said I wanted to check. I can just check in here, actually. So I pick up a medkit, click it, click drop, it drops it. If I click drop again, it should disconnect me from the caller, or from the server, which it does. Okay, so that's because item reference is still having a value. So because it's valid, when we click drop, it runs all this again on an item we do not own in our inventory. So it disconnects us from the server. So after this runs, we need to set this to nothing, essentially. What do I do? Trying to think, what would a... How do you set a value to nothing in Blueprint? I'll figure it out. But anyways, you're just going to simply set item reference. You can Google this as well. I'm going to put it in the description once I find it so I don't make this video even longer. But you're pretty much going to make this null. So just not have any value. So that, wait, invalidate? Aha. No, dang it. Alright, that didn't work either. But you're pretty much going to make item reference invalid. So that way, this check here fails, and it does not disconnect you from the server because it no longer has a reference to that item because it's no longer in the player's inventory. So yeah, I'll point this out in the description as well as show it in the next video, which might even be tonight, I don't know. So in the next video we will go on using the items based on what we already have set up. So I will see you then.